yesterday, RFK Jr., Robert F. Kennedy Jr., announced that he is running for president.
Right.
And there was an interesting poll that was taken. They asked people who had voted, 600 people who had voted for President Biden in 2020, who they would vote for, and a big chunk of them said they would vote for RFK.
That's right. That particular hotel, the Park Plaza Hotel, was one of his uncle Teddy Kennedy's favorite spots to go. And so he came, RFK Jr., who is RFK's son and actually brother of a Fox News journalist, Doug Kennedy. He came from California with his wife, Cheryl Hines. You remember her from, absolutely, Curb Your Enthusiasm. And so what he did was he announced he's running for president of the United States. It was a 2-hour speech. He touched on his career. He touched on Big Pharma, which you would expect because he's an anti-vaxxer. He touched on social media because he's been censored by them. He touched on Joe Biden and the Ukraine situation. And he touched on Donald Trump and the lockdown during COVID.
And China as well.
Yeah, he also, so he jumps out. So Biden, for the most part, in this recent poll, 67% of the vote. Marianne Williams has got 5%, which is pretty significant considering she does not have a big political name. Robert F. Kennedy has 14% immediately
digits.
and 13% undecided. Well, to me, that is a rebuke of President Biden, who for some reason really hasn't made up his mind about running, even though he's tells some people he's running, but he has not made it formal when originally the plan was to do it right after his State of the Union address. So RFK gave his speech. And then he joined Tucker at night. And one of the things that he sees eye to eye on Tucker with, they both don't think we belong in Afghanistan.
I think that the general theme of my speech was this corrupt merger of state and corporate power, which is turning our country into a corporate kleptocracy, into a system of socialism for the rich, and this kind of a cushy socialism for the rich, and this kind of brutal, merciless capitalism for the poor. Last month, the United States government told 30 million people it was cutting their their food stamp checks by 90%. It took 15 million people off of Medicare. The same month, it gave $300 million to the Silicon Valley Bank and tapped up the cost of the Ukraine war to $113 billion. We have 57% of American citizens could not put their hands on $1,000 if they have an emergency. And we're bailing out the bankers. We're paying for a war that, we can't afford.
Sure.
Ukraine instead of Afghanistan, I meant.
And one of the things about RFK Jr. is he is from probably the most famous political family in America. And that's one of the reasons he went to Boston. And there you can see him, that's in McLean, Virginia, back in the day, his mother Ethel and his father, Bobby Kennedy Jr. He grew up as a Kennedy, but as it turns out, if he's going to run for president, he's got some problems inside his own family because his campaign has actually appalled members of the Kennedy family. His sister, Carrie Kennedy, put out a statement and said, "I love my brother Bobby, but I do not share or endorse his opinions on many issues, including the COVID pandemic, vaccinations, and the role of social media platforms in policing false information." But when you look at, that statistic we put up a little while ago, the poll of people who are going to vote Democrat, of the announced people, keep in mind, Joe Biden is not announced yet. RFK Jr. is actually now the #1 front runner on the Democrat side of those who have declared. Now, Joe Biden has not declared.
Williamson.
Yeah. Joe Biden has not yet declared, and people are going, what's taking him so long? If you think back to 2019, before the 2020 election, where he faced off eventually with Donald Trump, Joe Biden did not get in the race until April 25th. And that's next week. So don't be surprised if Joe Biden doesn't throw his hat in next week.
Well, he did say when he was on the plane on Air Force One coming back from Ireland, a reporter asked him when he was going to make the announcement. And he said, "I told you my plan is to run again." He said, "We will announce relatively soon." But the speech yesterday was very interesting. It was a 2-hour speech from RFK Jr. And it was a packed crowd. People were actually behind the risers standing, and then they had an overflow room if people wanted to go there. He said, Cheryl Hines introduced him, who's hilarious. She was married to Larry David on the show Curb Your Enthusiasm. She was his TV wife. And he said, we would have a really funny first lady if I won. He said, I told my wife the other day, I said, I've got so many skeletons in my closet that if they, meaning the skeletons, could vote, I could be king of the world. He does have quite an interesting past. But it was kind of refreshing to hear some of the words that he said. He said, during this campaign and during my administration, my objective will be to make as many Americans as possible forget that they're Republicans or Democrats and remember that they're Americans. So basically, what Joe Biden said about unifying everyone. He said we have polarization in this country today that is so toxic and so dangerous at any time since the Civil War. And part of the principal mission of my campaign and my presidency is going to be to end that division.
Remember, if you watch President Biden just stumble his way through Ireland, unable to, and choosing not to make a speech at the end, the first time in almost anyone's memory not to give any joint press conferences after, you see how many few interviews he does, you see how vulnerable he is. People in the Democratic Party must be saying to themselves, how much longer should I stand on the side? Keep in mind, too, Teddy Kennedy did challenge Jimmy Carter. Everyone said Jimmy Carter's so vulnerable. Teddy Kennedy was extremely popular. The problem is he did have Chappaquiddick. RFK Jr.
That was a big problem.
Yeah, of course. But RFK Jr. does also have a voice issue, which is going to be an issue because you got to speak maybe 4 times a day, 5 times a day if you actually want to be successful. One person that he has in his corner is future Jet quarterback Aaron Rodgers, currently of the Packers. He appeared to double down on his support for RFK because of their anti-vax attitude. And he did indicate earlier that he would support him. You know who else supports him running? Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon says, go in there and, stir things
Split
up.
the ticket.
I'm not sure that
Bannon
Steve
vote
Bannon,
for him?
I'm not sure. No, I'm sure he wouldn't. You kidding?
He's just telling him to run.
He's telling him to run
just
to
wants
create
him to
havoc
take
on the left.
Democrats away from Joe Biden.
Right. So that's just one thing. It makes it more interesting. It's just amazing to me that someone established this as Nikki Haley, who's working so hard, raised so much money, is in single digits, as in Mike Pence and a presumed candidate and others. They're in single digits. And then RFK, who is really not a well-known name, not a well-known politician, jumps in. He's got 14% already.
Right.
That has got to be disturbing to the Biden camp.
Well, he tweeted this out. He said, give me a sword. I need an army, and it can't be just the party. I need Democrats, Republicans, and independents. And then he got the endorsement from Aaron Rodgers. His response on Twitter, he tweeted out an emoji of a sword. You can
There
see
you
it
go.
there.
Indeed. Meanwhile, on the
What's the dot? It was a dot and then a sword.
I don't know.
That was an accident.
You used to think you had to put a period before something. I think they changed that. Meanwhile, on the Republican side, Ron DeSantis has been out and about giving a bunch of speeches and stuff like that. It's interesting. YouGov and Yahoo did a poll right a couple of weeks ago after Donald Trump was indicted on 34 felonies. And it showed that Donald Trump had jumped to a gigantic lead of 57 to 31 over Ron DeSantis. Well, now here we are 2 weeks later. Same poll shows that the Trump advantage over Ron DeSantis is down 10 points in 2 weeks. Mr. Trump now has 52% and Mr. DeSantis has 36. Trump went down 5, DeSantis went up as he starts barnstorming across the country, talking about kind of general things on if he were running for president, although he's not yet, what he would do.
He talked about gender identity. He talked about sexual orientation. He talked about what's going on in our public schools. He talked about taking on Disney. Here's Governor Ron DeSantis in South Carolina.
We're not going to use your tax dollars to teach kids to hate our country or to hate each other. We just believe that parents should be able to send their kid to school, have them watch cartoons, just be kids without having some agenda shoved down their throats all the time. And if Disney objects to that, well, so be it. We're going to do what's right. Somewhere along the line, it became normal that a university is used to impose an ideological agenda, to foment political activism, and to be agents for quote-unquote social justice. We will be signing legislation within the next 6 weeks eliminating so-called DEI programs from all public universities. They say it stands for diversity, equity, inclusion. In reality, What it is a Trojan horse to impose left-wing ideology.
Also, during this, where he's been going out speaking, he spoke last week to, actually a couple of days ago, to the Heritage Foundation. And at the end, he gave a hint of what's coming, because he said he was discussing plans for the state budget in Florida. And he said, quote, "Once we're done with that, things are going to get interesting." And the audience started to laugh because they know that that's when he starts to run for president.
He was hitting several spots in South Carolina yesterday. Spartanburg, which is in the upstate near Clemson, and then down in Charleston, where College of Charleston is, and where a lot of people do love him in South Carolina.
And so you think about this, you got Governor Haley, you have Senator Scott, and right now Trump is is number one in most of the poll, in every state poll that I've seen. And Governor DeSantis is getting pushed by his donors. Jump in. And it could happen as soon as next week. I don't think
when
there's
is
any doubt
session
about
over
it.
with? Because you said he was...
Yeah, they said May, but there might be some pressure on him to jump in next week. He had a meeting with donors the other day who were getting a little bit nervous. Trump is doing so well. I think Donald Trump has the best team, not to put down 2016 and 2020. This seems to be the best Trump team yet. They seem organized. They seem tight. And Pat Summerall's daughter seems to be doing a fantastic job. And there was a big story how there's
What does she do?
She's running the campaign, and she is a big rival. Now, her and DeSantis had a big rift. She helped him become governor. They had a huge rift, and now she's working hard to make sure he doesn't win the nomination. So it's gonna get pretty exciting very soon. Mike Pompeo out. Mike Pence, I'm sure, will be in right after.
Yeah.
Or maybe Tim Scott.
I think that's the feeling we all have this morning. It's getting exciting again.
Yeah,
right.
We're starting to see people jump in there.
Right, and speaking of Florida, you got Ron DeSantis, you got Donald Trump, and you've got Francis Suarez. He's the mayor of Miami. He's hinted he might actually throw his hat in, and he's coming up very shortly right here on Fox.
Brian, you think he'll run? You know him very well.
Yeah, they don't speak. DeSantis and Mayor Suarez haven't spoken in months. Like Rick Scott and DeSantis do not get along. So it's interesting within the Republican Party.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.